Good evening and welcome to the Monday, March 20th, West Clermont Local Schools Board of Education meeting. Mr. Romano, would you call us to order, please?
Mrs. Delaney?
Present?
Mr. Chumley?
Present.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Present.
Mr. Patton?
Present.
Mr. Rudy?
Present.
All present?
Thank you. We do have need to go into executive session. The recommend to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of consideration, the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee, and to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, and a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy?
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
5 yes.
We will be going into executive session and return at 7 p.m. Welcome back. We are returning from executive session. Mr. Romano, will you call us back from our executive session?
Mrs. Delaney?
Present.
Mr. Chumley?
Present.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Present.
Mr. Rudy?
Present.
Mr. Patton?
Present.
All present?
Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, and a second?
Second.
Mr. Patton? Mr. Romano?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley? Yes. 5 yes.
Next on the agenda is, we have some recognition for this evening.
All right, so we had a few students go over, and they competed in the four-way test speech at the Eastside Rotary, and they all placed, and they were all awarded some form of financial scholarship, correct? And so we're recognizing those students right now. We have Rudra Patel and Caitlin Oliver.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
This is Rutra's second time presenting and being part of the Rotary four-way test, and so she is our expert here.
If you were at our award ceremony last year, her name was called Sally.
And what year is she?
She's
Sophomore. I bet we're going to hear more of her.
I think so.
And I know that we have parents here in the house this evening, and no students are successful without supportive, wonderful parents who probably listened to the speech multiple times, maybe more than you wanted to. So if you guys don't mind standing and being recognized.
All right. Public speakers at our board meeting, Mr. Romano, do we have any?
I did not see any back there.
We don't have any.
Do it. All right.
Okay, thank you. Next is the consent agenda.
Good evening, members of the board. Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for March 20th, 2023. On the agenda, we have the retirement of Mara Boyd. She has worked in our district for 34 years, so we wish her well in her future endeavors. I know that Mr. Patton would love to have her back, that's for sure. We also have the resignations of one elementary assistant principal, one computer technician, one full-time paraprofessional aide, and one part-time paraprofessional aide. We also have the proposed hiring of one second shift custodian and 4 part-time paraprofessional aides. On the agenda, we have the proposed approval for supplemental contracts for multiple home tutors, middle school club advisor, and multiple coaches. We also have a request for unpaid leaves of absence, the hiring of classified substitutes, and multiple school volunteers and student teachers. On the agenda, we have requested to change approved FTEs by reducing by 1 superintendent administrative assistant. Okay. And adding 1 executive assistant to the superintendent FTE. Included in this agenda is the proposed approval to add the executive assistant to the superintendent on the non-certified exempt salary schedule. And finally, in the work beyond the contract section are the proposed approval for payments for the cooperating teacher stipend, the elementary health curriculum department stipend, and high schools that work support stipend.
That concludes the review of the personnel agenda submission for your consideration.
Mr. Overby's going to share the overnight field trip requests.
Well, we have two exciting overnight field trip requests, and these are great because they are both DECA and our Educators Rising are going to the national competition. So we had students who advanced. The first one, 7.02, is the Educator Rising, which is at the end of June, early July. And then the second, 7.03, is for DECA, and that one is in April. So two very exciting field trips where our students get an opportunity to present at the national level, so that's great. And then I think I have the next one as
Yes,
well.
the grant.
Okay. We do have one grant for approval tonight. It is from this grant is a sub-award of the United States Department of Agriculture that was awarded to the Ohio Department of Education, then was awarded to West Clermont Child Nutrition, $60,000 grant, which should pay for a majority of the new freezer that we need at the middle school. Mrs. McLeese and Mr. LaFata will conduct an RFP for that, and we're going to make sure that it can be moved if necessary. So, so $60,000 is going to go a long way to take care of that.
Item 7.05 is a request for approval of minutes from the February 13th, 2023 regular work session. Item 7.06 is request for approval of minutes of the board agenda, or the board meeting of February 27th, 2023. Item 7.07 is request for approval of the minutes for the March 6th, 2023 meeting. Item 7.8 are the requests for acceptance of donations, and those are, we have three of them this evening. First is from Anthony Tolanen, donated $150 to West Clermont Whole Child Assistance. Phil Dodge donated $500 to West Clermont Whole Child Assistance. And Altitude Trampoline Park donated $4,350, and I did check that number because I was amazed that it was $4,350, but 60-minute trampoline jump passes for students at Amelia, Clough, Holly Hill, Merwin, Summerside, Willowville, Withamsville, Tabasco Elementary Schools, and the West Clermont Middle School. So there'll be a lot of jumping going on there with that. And item 7.09 is request for approval of purpose and budget statements for this school year, for this fiscal year. And those are, there's two of them there. It is the, what we call the principal funds for Merwin and for Clough. Item 7.10 are the request for approval of financial statements, the bills paid list, and the investments for, and that was for the month of February. And the items there are listed. And so the request for the consent agenda is item 7.01 through 7.10.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. I'm going to put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Rudy? Mr. Romano?
Discussion?
Oh, sorry. Discussion?
I'm looking at the agenda that I pulled up earlier today. I don't see the DECA. Was that added? The DECA field trip?
I had to click twice, and it came up again.
And I don't have 7.10 either.
So, yeah, to be honest with you, I only had one field trip earlier on mine as well, so that's that.
So let me, okay. This here, right?
Yeah, the only one that I
Yeah,
had
it's
was this,
there.
the first one, the
So
overnight one.
But you're
Was it-
saying when you went in before, you didn't see it, or you don't see it now?
I'm not seeing it now.
Oh,
I see it now, I didn't see it earlier.
You can refresh, Tammy.
How do I refresh?
Pull, swipe down.
It's okay. I need to abstain from the agenda.
Both under 703. Under content.
yeah, I have it.
I'll connect with Mr. Parisi.
Okay. Are you logged in? Because I'm not logged in right now. I just went in just as a person, not as me.
That's where
And I can see it.
Yeah. that's right. I'm logged in as me.
Oh, you are, so you should definitely be able to see. Okay. I don't know. Is there some information you need before we move on?
No, I was just mentioning to Mrs. Delaney that I wasn't at 2 of the 3 meetings.
Oh,
So I have to abstain from the entire agenda, but to the point of, I didn't see the last 2 items.
well, what we could do is we could pull out those, the minutes and vote for that separately,
Okay.
so that you don't have to pull out. So can you do that?
We can, so do you want to remove?
Yeah. Remove all the minutes out of the consent agenda
Okay,
and have them do that separately.
all right.
So we'll vote for everything in consent minus the minutes.
Okay.
So you don't have to nullify your vote.
Got it.
But no questions about field trips or anything, no details. Okay. Are you good?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd just like to acknowledge Molly Lloyd. I've worked with her for many years, and I wish her a lot of success in retirement. It's a loss to us for years.
So we're voting on items 7.01 through 7.10 less 7.05, 06, and 07, correct? Okay,
Yes.
all right. Set? Call the roll?
Call roll?
Okay, Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley? Yes. Mr. Patton?
Yes.
5 yes. We're going to vote on the minutes.
Yeah, I think, can we do that as a consent too? Instead of separately, since she wasn't here for any of them?
We can.
Okay.
So we can bring together items 7.05, 7.06, and 7.07, which is the request for approval of minutes.
Because you can't vote on any of them.
One of the 3, but that's okay. We'll
Or do you
just
want-
move forward. It's okay.
We do it separate. You okay? I need a
We do
motion
two-
for that.
We do 2 and 1.
I was missing
We
that
can
one.
do 2 and 1.
In the
Wanna do 2 and 1?
Yeah, she'll just tell us which one she, which one can you?
The second.
Okay.
She can, do the second or can?
Can.
Okay.
Do that one.
All right, so we'll do the minutes for the March 20th meeting, 7.06. Need a motion for that?
And a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Patton? Any discussion?
Mr. Chumley? Yes. Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Abstain.
Abstain? And
Did you forget me?
did I say Mr. Patton? Mr. Rudy, sorry.
Yes.
All right. 4 yes, 1 abstention. And so then the request for approval of minutes for the February 13th and the March 6th meetings.
Can we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Patton? And a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy? Any discussion? Mr. Romano?
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley? Yes. Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Abstain.
4 yes, 1 abstention. Okay.
Superintendent's visit.
Well,
Item 801.
we got that all taken care of. All right, thanks, everybody, for your flexibility. Well, tonight, it gives me great pride and pleasure to be able to introduce Mike Overby, as he led our Citizens Advisory Commission work this fall, and the team. So thank you guys so much for coming. We're excited to hear the report, and we'll just turn it over to you guys.
Well, I'll introduce our speakers tonight. It has been a wonderful process to work with this group here. They work very hard, along with some board members as well, to research, to talk, to learn, and to what we're at tonight is some board recommendations to the Board of Education. So we have Jen Schaefer, come on up. Jen will lead off, and then, I'm not sure is it Randy or Craig Dobson? Amelia Grad, correct. Then John Kofer, and then Brandy Colton will talk tonight as well. So I want to show you just a visual real quick. This is just a few of the documents that we talked about during the 6 months that we've been working on this. And to try to distill this down into a presentation is pretty hard, but they did a great job, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them tonight.
Thank you, sir. All right, good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Adams, Treasurer Romano. I'm pleased to be here again to discuss what we've worked on for our Citizens Advisory Committee. I think one thing that anybody in this district can agree upon is that we all care about the safety and well-being of our students, and that was our main focus this time, is we were looking at all stakeholders, making sure that they have a safe environment to engage in learning, and what processes we need to use to evaluate and continue improvements in these efforts. I won't read all of this, but this is everything we looked at for our research. I mean, we had speakers, we had local law enforcement, we had the local fire departments come in, just a multitude of speakers that we had come in to meet with us. We worked with Mr. Overby, obviously. We had, here I spoke too soon, facilitated a number of presentations by subject matter experts. And then one of the other things we did was submit a school safety survey to our 5th through 12th graders. Brief summary of our conclusion. We found that West Clermont has been very proactive in maintaining a safe environment for our students. We recognize that it's impossible for any school district to be 100% safe and secure, but we do feel that our district has adequate plans and communications in place should an emergency occur. Our recommendation for improving school safety and security, they're not lengthy, alarming, or extreme, but we believe they will give the district an added measure of support that should benefit both staff and students. Mr. Dobson, here you go. Yes.
Awesome. Good evening, board. So my section is about communication. Let's see here. Yes, it worked. Cool. I feel like that's step one in your
Yes.
presentation.
Great.
So thinking about communication as we talk about it in this, as this Find Teams work, is really focusing not only on the emergency crisis situation, but also non-emergency crisis situations, how we're communicating. And really when you think of all the stakeholders between students, staff, admin, community, parents, it's massive, you know, and so you could really, it's overwhelming, and so tonight for this presentation, communication is about how do we communicate effectively to all of those stakeholders and non-emergency situations, but also when those crisis situations come up, and yeah. And we certainly want to have communication be a key part of our success. So current state of communication is utilizing many different avenues for that. And so, you know, I think for all of us, we get communication via text, emails, phone calls, and that's exactly what the district does. The district uses those examples being weekly emails from principals and school leaders and district updates, trying to update students and families about reporting systems that we have, and constantly keeping those updated a number of different avenues. Also, and these are some more examples of our current state, and just given some examples since July of 2022, these are some different examples of how the district has updated and ensured communication with staff, with all the stakeholders. So wonderful examples like the safety guides, the updates to harassment and bullying reports, podcasts, and then for staff is looking at those handbook policies, crisis communication guides. So, and if at any point I'm missing anything, feel free to jump in. And so, this I think is just want to take a moment and talk about this, and we as a committee really found this important. The fact that geographically our district, you know, not any knowledge that we don't know in this room, but it is a large geographic space, and so that means we have to deal with first responders from multiple districts, and so I think it was really encouraging. I think as the committee, as we had multiple meetings with the first responders come in and talk to the CAC, and just the fact that one of the calls as I was thinking about this slide is, I think in those meetings, you know, you could have the egos of like this first responder district is taking over, but you could see in those that these are meetings that are happening on a consistent basis to make sure if a situation does come up that there's the best possible plan. You know, you can't plan for every situation, but they're, you know, coming together to create the safest environment for our staff and students. And so that was encouraging, I think, for the CAC to see firsthand, but also hear exactly how that's happened, the plans that they've developed. Yeah, so that was a great part. As we look into the future state of communication and how do we make communication the most effective and best for our school district, one of the aspects as we looked at some of the research and analytics is just the proactive safety messaging that is currently happening is just not reaching all of the members and all of the stakeholders. So how do we do that? And so we talked about the possibility of looking at how do we use a professional marketing campaign so we are creating that awareness. We are helping all stakeholders understand the systems and protocols that are in place and also encourage everyone to be able to report and know how to use those tools. Because you know, are always thinking about improvement, and this is certainly an area that we, as we looked at research and data and those massive booklets that Mike has over here, that was a part of that with our communication. And I think just a couple more bullet points is with communication, you are always looking at the best technology solutions, and technology is certainly a huge thing that's ever changing and ever moving, but ways that we can utilize future technology and technologies that we have in place to make sure we're communicating effectively, and also communicating between when those crisis situations do happen with the first responders, so making sure we have proper communication procedures in the buildings. And that looks different building to building. Some of our buildings are a little bit older, so it does make it harder to communicate in those buildings, but we want to make sure that we're able to do that and use communication as best as we can. And then lastly, just continuing to address those gaps for families that might struggle with technology. Unfortunately, some families will have technology issues, and so making sure that if we are sending a majority of our messaging through tech, how do we make sure we're not missing families there? So I think I will pause if there's anything else. Great. Awesome. Thank you, Board.
Good evening. I'm John Kiefer, a very proud father of a fourth grade Amelia Elementary student. And I have to say that everywhere because that's the main reason why I do anything that I do. I'm not as good at remembering everything as my the prior speaker, so I have some notes. So with your permission, bear with me. And there's about 13 slides. I'll do my best to be brief and give you 35,000 feet overview of what we discussed with physical safety and security. So generally, this is one of the key pillars of the process. And as I try to walk you through this at that 35,000 vantage point as best as I can, it's to be clear that under this pillar, the CAC considered our current state by utilizing data from West Clermont students regarding their perception of school safety and security, as well as input from local law enforcement agencies and leaders in the field of safety services. Some of what I say will appear to be redundant, but I think there's key topics that resonated throughout the process, and so you may hear it more, not just for the sake of repeating, but really to show how important some of those key components were. Additionally, current policy and practices were considered and reviewed as it related to keeping students and staff safe and secure. Since 2010, 6 of 9 schools, did it go? Okay, thank you, all right. Schools have been renovated or rebuilt, which met the safety standards at the time of construction. There have been safety enhancements to 3 of the schools. Several CAC members participated in a tour of Merwin, Willowville, the middle school and the high school. And after that tour, it was the general consensus of the CAC members that there exist issues in equity and adequacy in some of those buildings, especially compared to the newer constructed facilities. These issues of equity and adequacy present safety and security challenges for the school and the district. In 2022, Sean Riley, who's the Hamilton County Educational Safety Service Center Administrator, along with key staff of the West Clermont School District and members from first responders, they all conducted a comprehensive safety assessment of 9 schools. At the end of the assessment, Mr. Riley presented administrators with areas for improvement. Now, overall, West Clermont School District buildings met or exceeded those industry standards. Presently, the district updates and reviews the school emergency plans regularly, and this includes your mandated by law fire drills, tornado drills, etc. From 2017 to 2022, the district has partnered with all law enforcement agencies holding jurisdiction where our schools are located. And Craig alluded to this, being a former police officer and understanding that we have all these jurisdictions, the amount of cooperation was really impressive for me to see, that you didn't have the jurisdictional issues that you would tend to have, at least back in my days many years ago. So that was very refreshing to see of how they coordinated and worked together. This partnership has led to SROs, school resource officers, at the middle and high schools. It has also allowed for roaming SRO, who covers 5 district schools. Additionally, the Clermont County Sheriff's Department has made patrols of Holly Hill and Amelia Elementary Schools a regular patrol priority. In 2023, the high school, bless you, will add a specifically trained police dog to their SRO team. And if you saw the photos, it's not your typical canine that you would associate with law enforcement. Actually, it looked very cute and cuddly, and I believe the name was Naya?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it. Cyber safety is a continual topic of discussion and always remains an area of importance in this new age. The risks and threats are multifaceted. The West Clermont School District recognizes this risk and maintains an incident response plan and a team that provides incident guidance as ongoing protocol. Internet content filtering processes are monitored 24/7, and they provide this guidance and oversight on and off campus. Antivirus and anti-malware components are operational and updated regularly. In 2023, the West Clermont School District will initiate plans to upgrade its video surveillance system utilizing mostly grant funding. West Clermont School District sponsored a survey entitled School Safety, Security, and Well-Being. And I don't know if we had a copy or if we showed a copy. I actually shared, my 4th grader and I, as soon as it came out, I sat down and it was a discussion over my coffee and her hot chocolate to answer the same questions. It was administered to students in the 5th through 12th grades and was facilitated by their teachers. The results from the survey suggested that nearly 80% of the students reported feeling either very safe or safe most of the time. Now, slides 23 and 24, which I'll go through and you can look at, maybe you can see them there a little better on your slides, but it's more data that you can review, and it's data gained from the survey, which has some significant data points that are good for you to have an understanding for how the students feel as it relates to safety and well-being. I'd like to point out that of those who stated they witnessed the incidents described in the prior slides, the assaults, the potential weapons, or the threats, it's important to note how many reported those incidents to a trusted adult. As you'll see in the next slide, that 80% of students that participated in the survey self-reported that they had at least one trusted adult staff member that they could turn to. That's a pretty significant status and data point. went too far. There we go. Our future state, quite frankly, is to increase the connection and trust between the students and adult staff to go above that 80% mark, as indicated from the prior survey, but also to work to reach that 20% that may feel disconnected or may not have the same home connection and parental guidance as many of the other students do. We want to broaden the sphere of influence to increase the discussion of safety and security to the homes if and where possible. Address the safety options presented by Sean Riley after a safety analysis, and expand safety teams in the schools and include the parents and the students in those teams. And I believe finally, on this slide, the school district seeks to effectively address the future state, and these are additional key points to consider. They want to fund additional SROs, conduct a physical audit of the doors at 3 of the schools in the district, seek options to minimize risks posed by environmental designs as it relates to glass in the buildings, conduct a staff safety survey, implement a feasibility study to replace Holly Hill, Merwin, and the middle school, balance the benefits of natural light versus glass with safety and security best practices. And I will turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Good evening. So I think the previous speakers have all led up to this, which is the capacity building we have here in the West Clermont School District. And it's very clear that the current plans and practices that we have in place not only meet national standards and state standards, but they also exceed them as well. However, this is an ongoing process that's ever evolving, so there are always things that we can improve upon when it comes to, physical or emotional safety. Currently, we have multi-tiered systems of support in place that support our students and our staff. We have positive behavior support framework, and I know as the staff, we receive ongoing training and participate in semi-annual fidelity assessments. And I'm actually one of the staff members who works with Hamilton County, as well as one of our assistant administrators, to conduct some of those fidelity assessments. And we're getting ready to do our second round now. And it is an ongoing, evolving process that changes from year to year based on our students, the needs, what we have, what we don't have, and how we can get what we need that we do not have. We obviously have the Public School Works online training that everybody participates in. And this led to some points with our capacity moving forward here. Our future state here, there's a lot of things. The first one is conduct ongoing cyber safety, and I've noticed as an employee that the phishing emails, whenever I see one, I'm quick to hit the phishing button, and then when the email comes out, I always look to see if my name is on there sometimes. Obviously, expanding de-escalation techniques is very important. And then the professional development on a lot of these was brought up. CPR, I think that needs to obviously grow. I'm not CPR trained. I would love to be, and I intend to the next time an opportunity presents itself. One of the things that the hands-on fire extinguisher, I do the public school works. I've fortunately never held a fire extinguisher, and so that was one of the things we talked about was, the adults in the building could easily, handle that in a situation, but I think having that hands-on training would be beneficial. Same thing with a med sled. I teach on the first floor, for example. Could I figure out how to use the med sled? Absolutely, but there should be people trained on these second and third level floors at the high school that automatically know what to do in an emergency situation, because it's not a drill where you're, evacuating floor by floor. Of course, stop the bleed, trauma-informed care, and the zones of regulation. I think that's really important moving forward with the SEL with our students, and helping them these regulation strategies and giving them an environment to do so that they're comfortable with and that they feel safe in. Obviously, partnering with the Whole Child Network to assess the application of these recommendations is going to be necessary. Additional areas of inquiry would be to review the learning standards for technology and seek ways to embed these standards in subject matter curriculum. So weave them into the classroom and not just these little 20-minute PowerPoint presentations. weave them in, that way it becomes kind of ingrained in them and that they use them. Create cybersecurity awareness campaigns, embed best practices in student clubs and activities. Students are our best voices in the building. They hear us as staff talk all day long, but if we can get clubs and other groups that students are involved with to help us kind of project these things, then I think it will help support things. And then also including our stakeholder database and record our trainings and note certification of expirations, coordinate with the 3 local jurisdictions. And I will echo what the 2 previous speakers said. I was so impressed with how well they all work together. They seem to just really get along and have the best interests. And I had no concern that, which one's going to respond or anything. I had no concerns as far as safety went when that was discussed. I guess it's you next, so that's it. Mine was the least database, so.
Thank you.
Just to do some concluding thoughts, just from my own personal perspective, when I heard that 80 out of 100 kids essentially felt that they had a trusted adult, I recognize that's great, but I would challenge you to challenge your staff to raise that. I think it should be higher. And that's something that I have taken into my own personal work where I deal with some kiddos that might be getting in some trouble. And that's one of the questions that I always ask them now is, do you have a trusted adult in your building? And if they say no, then we work to find them one. Somebody that they can check in, check out with every day. So I would encourage you guys to really look into that and really challenge your staff to make those connections as much as they can. One thing we do want to note is a lot of stuff that kept coming up was cybersecurity, social media, internet bullying, as far as safety of our students. And that is obviously something that is a whole CAC topic in and of itself. You can go 8 months on just that, trying to figure out how to make sure our children are more safe online. So that's also something that we would encourage you guys to pose to future CACs. And to also work with that whole child network to see how we can really dig in deeply there, because that is where we're seeing the biggest issue with our kiddos. We know that we meet or exceed our safety standards for physical safety, and we would really love to also feel that we meet and exceed standards when you look into the future, when we can potentially revamp some of those buildings. I went to Merwin, I'd never been there before, and then went to Willowville directly after. And as one of my previous speakers said, the inequity between the 2 buildings is astonishing. And I would really encourage you guys to look at ways within your budgets, within your levies, all of those ugly words that no one likes to talk about, your bonds, and look for a way to help those schools be brought up to the same level of safety and security as our others. That is all we have for you guys, so I'm going to open the floor to questions. We've got a large group of our CAC right here, so I'm just going to kind of sit, and you guys, questions, feel free to ask them away.
Before we begin that, I just want to say a few words about the team. On the very first night, the question was posed to the team, how do you define school safety, and what do you think about when you think of school safety? And it was an emotional night. It was very hard to hear what the parents had to say and the members of the team, because it was one of those, well, I used to think of school safety as a crossing guard, helping my kid get from across the street. I used to think of school safety as just making sure my kid wasn't, getting bullied on the bus. And today, I define school safety as, I hope my kid, something terrible doesn't happen in school. And just the fact that everybody sitting on that team, that was like raw and fresh in their mind, and it's very hard to be in the reality of what public schools and what we have to deal with kids today. And every single team member felt that. And so I felt like this process with CAC was very intense, very serious, and emotional. And there were some meetings where there was a little bit there was some disagreement, there was almost tears at times, and I just can't thank the team enough for how much they brought such integrity to this process, asked us very hard questions, and really just kind of allowed the process to unfold. I think it's something we probably could have talked about for the next 3 or 4 years because of how things change. But it felt so good to get affirmation from them as to actually learning something that they didn't know and affirming the steps we had taken. I know through the work that Mike at Overby has done and Chuck LaFata this year in receiving grants for school safety, a lot of the things that were discussed with Sean Riley, we're going to be able to finish by the end of the summer, right, Chuck? I mean, we're on track to take everything down the list. And so sometimes you hesitate. Sometimes you don't want to know. I don't want to know about it because then I got to do something about it. And what if we can't afford it? What if? This team, heroically went into that, facing reality, getting that expert voice, and then stepping up to the plate, addressing it. So I'm very proud of the team for that. I don't know if board members, I know that Michelle was on the team for a period of a big bulk of the time. Jim is on the team, and then Ryan joined the team at the end. And so I don't know if there's any things that you guys want to just share about the process before we open up with some dialogue, because they're all here tonight. They've been such dedicated people. I do hope that we can get some back and forth dialogue going. So
I was present for the huge meeting of all the different jurisdictions of our law enforcement, and not just our local law enforcement. We had the experts who brought in the safety information from how they go in and assess like Children's Hospital or those different things, and it was amazing. I mean, it was absolutely like the most eye-opening experience that I have ever been able to participate in. It was just, and everybody at the end of that meeting, I mean, they were just so appreciative of our local law enforcement and how, like, there is no stepping on toes. It's just whoever gets there, first, and they're going to collaborate as a team, and they're going to look out for the best interest of our students, our staff, our community that is in the event of an emergency. So that was something that was just very, very eye-opening to know that, we didn't have to ask for that they just do it on our behalf. So, and, thank you to the committee. This group they're amazing. We have so much diversity in the backgrounds of what they do day to day. We have parents, we have community members, we have, it's just what they brought to the table to dive into this, and their professional expertise that they brought to the table helped to make this a very quick, concise presentation to us, and so that we can make decisions.
Jim or Ryan?
I just echo what Michelle said.
For this particular one, I was sad that I only got to do one visit with you guys. This is an area that is near and dear to my heart for what I do for a living. And so the meeting that I got to attend, you guys did a really good job on that. And just from what I got to observe, you guys did a really thorough job. And I do appreciate what you guys have done.
And so before we open up for some more questions, I do want to echo what Jen said about the data. When you, as a superintendent, see that data of 80% of the students feel like they have an adult they can turn to, it's a celebration and a devastation all at the same moment. And it's not okay. It's not a number that we can ever settle for. And so this survey is something we want to continue to come back to so that we can see progress in that area. Because one of our core beliefs is relationships that are and rise, and it's about caring and connecting with each other. And when we see a gap like that, we have to do everything in our power to fix that. And so what Jen had mentioned is how it was very hard for us at times when we tried to stay focused on safety and security and that cyber safety, stay in that bucket, but every time you just keep bumping up against bullying or social emotional, the state of anxiety and our kids and how they're and behavior. And so, and we knew that was going to be hard, and there was going to be times where it was going to be hard to draw that line, but we stayed committed so that we could stay focused, and do know that we need to broaden that conversation with this team or another team as we go on. So I'd like to open the floor now just to ask the team questions either about the process or the recommendations that they are presenting tonight.
Bless you.
Bless you.
I took a deep breath when you said that we did a survey and asked our students how many felt, or did you feel safe? I took a deep breath thinking, oh gosh, that's going to be a really low number because it's the world we live in. And I was relieved at the 80% being so high, but I totally agree with what you said, Mrs. Adams, that we need to strive for greater achievement there.
Could you go back on that slide for a minute and just show the locations? Because I think that was something that was significant in that data, is figuring out, like, on a normal school day, where is the challenge? And let's see, it's that one right, no, go back one.
Go back. Okay.
So you're seeing some of the highest results when it comes to before school or after school activities and in the classroom, cafeteria. Then you start getting into restrooms, hallways, on the bus, and you see things change. And so having this data to get very specific about location also helps us in our strategy. And certainly we want to see some of those numbers change, but it helps us target our efforts and know that it's not all kids all the time, that it's these parts of the day that have more vulnerabilities in them. Thank you.
Also, I know there are a lot of slides that are in that survey, so I'm sure you guys have copies of it.
Yeah, and it's on the, in the Citizens Advisory Commission meeting notes, that data is in there if anybody wants to take a look at
So
that.
there's a lot more than what we shared just in this brief presentation tonight.
One of the areas is that I mentioned was the bus, and we're already making plans to work with Peterman and Mr. Dool for, I'll call it CPI light, how to de-escalate situations on a bus quarterly. So that training is, we're trying to get set for in August. So that's already in motion. It's something, because what you see from that slides is, it's the unstructured times. It's the hallways, it's the restrooms, it's things like that, that they're adolescents or young kids, and it happens, but we can start targeting things that, so I think it's going to be very, very efficient for us. And our kids. I have just a couple things as well. March 31st, I shared with you last week that we're going to have an interagency incident response training at the high school. It's going to be the first day of spring break. But Lieutenant Blankenship, he was very passionate about it. I think he called Chuck, myself, and Mrs. Adams on the same day and said, hey, we want to do this. And so we're going to have both, we're going to have as many agencies that can be there to go through and have all 3 floors of our building so they can see and feel it. Our maintenance team is going to be participating as, unfortunately, some of the victims, so that they get to observe it as well. And then our administrative team will be able to observe it, and we're going to do a tabletop at the end. So we're excited, it's not the right word, we're encouraged that we're going to have this, and it's just an example of the interagency communication that we do have, and the want and the will to keep our students and our staff as safe as possible. So there will be extra presence at the high school that day. We're getting communication out to our families as well. UC medical team will be there. They're the level 1 trauma center in the area. Lieutenant Blankenship said they wanted to come and be a part of this as well. So,
And this is on a day where we have no students.
no students or staff are in the building, on that side of the building for sure. So they'll have access to all 3 floors. Yes, it's the first day of our spring break, so it worked out well. Speaking of the interagency, there are some grants. The federal grant cycle has begun. There is an SRO grant that I've asked our agencies to think about. Mr. Parise had put together a great grant last year that we didn't get submitted for lots of different reasons, but we're going to plan to submit something that, and it's really going to be around that communication between us and the agencies in the time of need. So he's already doing some research there, so we're getting geared up for that as well, to even take that to the next level. So And I just want to recognize by name the rest of the folks that are here tonight. We have Tricia Moore, who's a middle school teacher, Brenda Knorr, Tracy Lotz, Brenda's a parent, Tracy Lotz is a parent and a graduate and a staff member, correct? Did I get all through? Okay.
And a daughter of a former staff member.
And a
Let's
daughter.
get it all in there, right?
And then, Craig, you had mentioned, you had heard from, and then Clara Strode. I'm not gonna get the middle, how do I say your middle? And she has been a great asset. I'm gonna move Craig and. Well, Craig and Clara came on this year as new members, and they were great additions. Do you have some things to say, Clara? You said that you were gonna say it. Not about me. Not about me, but she gave a great insight. She has a student in our district, but also a student that goes to another district, and just to see some of those comparisons.
We have Jason and Chuck too,
Sorry.
in the peanut
Jason
gallery.
Myron back there, and Chuck. It was a nice mix of board members, administrators, staff, and teachers that were involved in this. And then Brandon gave us the ultimate compliment, I thought, which is we need more staff meetings that are like this.
I mean, I've said this since, I was on this last year, and, and the staff touch on this. This is the epitome of productive conversation, even when you might disagree. I even hesitate to use the word disagree, because I feel like disagree is almost too strong of a word. It's always a very productive conversation. It's never contentious. It's never, it's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy. Not easy, but it's just, it's the way conversations
Should happen.
should occur.
Thank you. Do you guys have other questions for them? Because I'm going to give you guys more of a, if anybody wants to talk about what this process has meant for you. I know we shared some of this at the last meeting, but if there was anything that you would like the board to hear about, either this topic that we took on or the process in general.
I would say something about the trusted adult part in the building. Recently, our Student Advocates for Change Club took on this massive project with our administration. And on Main Street right now, every student's name is displayed, and as staff, we went through and we put adjectives next to their name that describe them. And, even the students who are non-directory kids got their own little private, paper that illustrated what we said, but there are kids that you wouldn't think that would even stop to look at something like that, and they're looking at it, and you can tell that they feel recognized, they feel heard, that somebody would take the time to write these things about them. And so in West Clermont High School, I see a lot of positive changes in terms of content and culture that are moving toward increasing that 80% of having somebody who trusts in the building. And our students are a part of that, which makes it even more amazing.
To piggyback off of that, in the middle school, I would say that the time of day and the day that you ask the question would change if it was 80% or not. Because there are kids who won't give you the time of day, but if they're in distress, they're looking for you to ask a question or to get you to help them. So if there is no issue, they may tell you that they don't have a trusted adult, but when it becomes an issue, they know who to go find.
Clara had her hand up back there.
So I want to speak to the process, and this is my first time that I was really actively involved with the school district, and it was such a great experience for me. And I think mainly because of my, I really enjoyed how, so a lot of the discussions that we had, right, a lot of outcomes, this is what you do next, this is what you do next. And I feel
going from some of our oldest schools to some of our newest, you said the inequity between them. What are some of the biggest disparities or the biggest disparity that you noticed between the two?
Sure. At Merwin, you have a group of classrooms that the kindergartners are housed in that then have to walk outside to get into the main building. They can't, someone from the office has to take them to and from, someone, and then you've got the kids in the back that are in the modulars. Obviously, I mean, you've got kids, I know they try to schedule to where when you go from your outside of the building classroom into the main building, you do your special, you do your lunch, you do your recess, and then you go back out to your main building. But just, I mean, just that brief amount of time, taking a whole class of kindergartners from your front classroom into your main building. It, to me, as a mother, that is the scariest, that would be the scariest time for me, because my child is completely open and vulnerable, because like Mrs. Adams said, when you talk about school safety and security and what's your biggest fear is that your kid's gonna get shot at school. And that is where that's where my mind goes, because I'm, you know, a worst case scenario person, but I would be terrified to have my child in that kindergarten, in that front part. And that's just the inequities in physical safety. That doesn't even go into, you know, the type of learning environments that you see at Willowville. You know, just their gorgeous two-level media center that those kids can go into. You know, they've got brand new gym and cafeteria. I mean, Holly Hill had to turn away kids this year for a dance because they didn't have enough room. I mean, it's just, it is our reality, and I understand that, and I understand it costs a lot of money to build new buildings or to even try and revamp old ones. But that's the issue pressing to you guys and to our community.
Well, I'll just correct, I think it was Merwin that had to turn people away for the dance. I hadn't heard about Holly Hill,
Maybe
so.
it was Merwin. Was it Merwin or Holly Hill?
Okay, I just wanted to,
My
no, that's
apologies.
okay, I just want to make sure, because
So, back to Merwin, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes, it was Mrs. Parker that had to, I remember now, thank you.
Yeah.
When you compare the middle school to high school, the high school has a nice run to it, it's a U. The middle school has a lot of dead ends, let's call it, that.
When we took,
Go ahead, you can talk to it.
okay, when we took the tour, my classroom is off of a courtyard, and the comment that was made is, if something happened, you could go out the window. You know, you could go into the courtyard, and my comment was, I can't go anywhere once I go into the courtyard because it's locked. Because all those doors are locked. I now have a key, which came that same week, which, thank you. But it's those kind of things, because you're like locked in. We have multiple courtyards because it makes all these rectangles. And the hallways, especially in the sixth grade part of the building, because I was in that part of the building previously, the hallways are much smaller. So it gets cramped if there's too many kids, it's not a good flow. And as we talked about, unstructured time is where the most incidences or a feeling of unsafe is where it occurs. And those hallways are unstructured time, especially at dismissals.
Yeah, Tricia, I think your reaction as you toured the two buildings stood out to me the most, because you live that every day, and it's one thing to be in that moment and then to kind of look at it with a critical eye and go through all those scenarios.
One of my reactions was sarcastic, because my reaction was, look at all the teacher bathrooms. I can't go to the bathroom very much, because there's only a few teacher bathrooms in our building, and like where we at Willowville, there was one next to every two classrooms, and I was like, wow, I was being sarcastic.
But it's like, what's your, kind of in the moment, you don't realize it. So that's why that comparison inside our own district is important, so.
I know it was mentioned too, like just the shape of the middle school. I know we're doing the best with what we have, but I think it was Mike who was talking about like principals like to do like their laps around, and it's you know, a zigzag and an in and an out and a back and a forth, and then there's the internet situation. Like it sounded like there's not the right kind of signal zoning. So to me, that could be a safety issue
can't speak to the internet piece of it, that would be Mr. Paris, but I can tell you that in Amelia Elementary, our radios, our police radios did not work in the buildings, and we had to get repeaters put in the building because of the way that it was built. So I can't speak for the internet.
That's one of our newer buildings, so that's.
Yeah, it's been fixed, so there's been a repeater that's
There's
been,
some things that we can do that
Yeah,
aren't,
so-
you know, revamping the entire building, but maybe just touching in different places like that, so.
again, we'd have to research that, I worked that building.
Repeaters are a part of it, but it's also sometimes just the cinder blocks and like needing to be, you know, near a window. Like there are some challenges last year when Mike and I were needing to talk to each other when he was at the middle school. We were having a hard time connecting, so we had to get to a landline. So cellular, it's not so much, Larry has been able to take care of the Wi-Fi, but the cellular connection sometimes
Okay,
is a
yeah,
challenge.
that makes sense.
It's not consistent either, because like, sometimes I can get a phone call, but I stood in the rain one day to get a phone call from the doctor because it wasn't working in the building. So it's not consistent.
Right. So, yeah, it certainly is an additional challenge.
That's where Larry's also working on, with the video surveillance project. It's a huge overhaul of all the buildings. And he went and talked to, stealing your thunder a little bit, Larry, but he went and talked to every building administrator, saying, where do you want these cameras? Where's your blind spots, let's say? And, by the end of the summer, we're going to, they're ubiquitous now, but it's even going to get better. And updates across the business with software that's going to make it much easier for our administrators. If there is a need, we'll be able to get to it there.
Well, that time investment was very valuable too, because it was the administrators, the head custodians that knew where if we made an adjustment, it wasn't that we had to replace cameras or make massive changes, just adjusting some things that we had, or maybe we had one area that was over covered and moving cameras would improve their visibility in areas where they didn't have it without impeding the visibility in that space that they came from. So, we found a lot of advantage in talking to them and getting that, firsthand knowledge of how those systems are used on a daily basis. I can look at a system, that we have and tell whether it's functional or not. I cannot necessarily tell whether it meets the need of the administrator in the building on any given day. Only they can tell me that. And so it was extremely valuable to do that.
Anybody else, final words?
I would like to, I'm working with Ohio Safety Center, I have been since February, getting our district compliant, all the buildings compliant, because they changed the rules and requirements. So it's coming along nicely, but it's remarkable talking to them in Columbus and in other school districts on how far behind other districts really are. I was astounded by the work that this committee did and how just getting keys for you in the courtyard was a result of, we never thought of that, so we got keys. But it's, this district is really, it's an overused term, on the cutting edge on a lot of initiatives, and school safety is one. And I know that because in meeting with other districts in the Ohio School Safety Center, half the stuff that we've done has not even started. So I want to thank all of you and Mike for getting the grant, and Larry and the board for allowing us to do that. It's remarkable what we've done, what they've done.
Thank you, Chuck. Board, any final words?
You know, it's a good committee when you hear from everybody, even people on the board and outside of the initial group. So that's really cool.
Yep.
I've been kind of blown away by how committed and in-depth these committees have gone, so thank you.
Yeah, it's an incredible group of people. I would say they represent West Clermont excellence at its best. When we set up this venture, we did a 2-year commitment, and Mike posed a question to them to say, like, would you be willing to stay on? Because we're looking at the longevity of this group and not wanting to go from everybody has, a year or plus experience to like 0 experience. So we're going to be working on bringing a new policy forward to you guys to be able to incorporate people who do want to stay on and continue the work. And we'll talk here over the next several meetings as to maybe what might be the next assignment for this team, because they take every assignment very seriously, and every recommendation they brought forward, I can't say we can like flip a switch and have it finished tomorrow, but I feel like everything on there is within reach, and we can build it into our plans if that's something that you guys, want to give your nod to and want to see. So,
Good. Thank you.
thank you. My comments are next, and Dan, I'm going to have Dan just pull up a slide. I wanted to show just visually, because it wasn't brought out in the presentation specifically, but the amount of people and the types of backgrounds which they brought forward. So I'll share, Larry Priest presented, and, he was just recognized as top 100 in the nation in terms of cybersecurity and technology and ed tech. So our very own Larry presented. Sean Riley from Hamilton County ESC, he is the safety administrator. That was a new position added there a couple years ago, and he has just been a great asset to us. Dave Hester from Elevar Design, being able to come and bring that architect standpoint and really speak to how our buildings were designed for safety and what improvements can be made in other buildings. Mark Dowd from Cincinnati Jewish Federation, he really brought a lot of expertise as it comes to just methodologies you can use inside of your systems as well as outside for, I'm trying to think of the word, it's not architect, it's more in design of the environmental design, thank you. I knew there was a word, I just couldn't pull it out. Mike Neville from Children's Hospital came and presented, and he had just a wealth of knowledge. Susan Driscoll, the president CEO of CPI, was with us. All of the fire, police, and all the jurisdictions were represented. So it was a very diverse group. Like they said, the expertise was there. And we were just so grateful to have these partners. It was Cincinnati Bell. Did Stephen Smith come too?
Yes.
I forgot about Stephen Smith. Okay, Stephen Smith was also there. And so, Mike, just reaching out with a quick phone call. Some of these were recommendations from this committee, some were connections that we had, but everybody is willing to help out a school system, and they jumped right in. So we're just grateful for our partners, and I wanted to publicly thank all of them. Finally, for my comments, I just want to, next slide, is remind everybody that we have our next town hall at Summerside this week. It's at 7 p.m. We're hoping to have a big crowd there. I think right now we have 75 RSVP'd. 94, okay, it's getting better. We certainly want to get over that 100 mark and would love to have the voice of our staff, our students, and our community and parents at this meeting. And just a note, in some of our brochures, we have Amelia Elementary that's scheduled for April 27th. We have that advertised at 7 has been the natural time, but Shane is doing a lock-in that night to attract more students and more families. So that's going to actually start at 5 p.m. So if everyone can just make a note about that. 5:30. Oh, 5:30?
We'll get food between 5 and 5:30 because that drop the kids off, so we'll have some food and then we'll get started about 5:30.
Okay, so we'll make sure that gets blasted closer to April. Right now, I know everyone has spring break on their mind and taking a little pause out of here, but we have a big week that we want to just hear everyone's voice, and we'll gear up for our final one for the school year in April. That's it. Any questions for me, or? Yes.
8.02.
8.02.
Did I?
You jumped ahead of us.
I missed an item. That's right, I jumped. Thank you. I just thought it was all about my comments. All right, let's bring Mike back up, and thank you for pointing that out. This is
Thank you, guys.
8.02.
The CAC.
Thank you, CAC.
The Clermont County Sheriff's Office MOU.
So as I said at the last meeting, we had one more piece. We have a contract now with Clermont County Sheriff's Office. We have an MOU with Union Township. And then we wanted to go a little bit deeper with our MOU, with an MOU with the Clermont County Sheriff's Office. So I put that in the board update this weekend. It's part of the board agenda. It's very similar to the Union Township MOU with some slight differences to it. So the superintendent respectfully requests the approval of a MOU with Clermont County Sheriff's Office as presented.
Per the recommendation of the superintendent, I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Rudy, any discussion?
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
I will abstain.
One abstention. So 4 yes, 1 abstention.
You want to explain why you're abstaining?
Oh, yeah, yes,
Just remind them. That's okay.
I'm abstaining because that's my place of employment, so just for the conflict of interest.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is board comments. Mr. Patton?
Oh, we have treasure comments
Oh, we have,
first.
oh, sorry.
We're
We've already heard that from
We are canceling everybody.
Yeah, we're canceling everybody
She
tonight.
just wanted to keep, she just wanted to keep this meeting
It all
short.
started with the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna wing it tonight.
So I'll keep it brief on that note. So just, and I apologize, I didn't say why they were here, but, with that CAC, I think there's three things. One is we're blessed and fortunate in this district to have parents, staff, community members that participate in something like this. We're also blessed and fortunate to have a superintendent leadership team that follows through and makes it happen. But we are also very fortunate to have a board that's pretty courageous to let that whole process happen. And I've worked with a lot of boards that if you brought to them the notion of, we're gonna have a group of citizens come in and evaluate different systems and processes of our systems, they would tell you no way, no how that's gonna happen. And it really takes, courage to have that happen, fortitude to embrace what they do. So I think Mr. LaFata was right on target when he said, this whole process is really, it's a best practice, not just in Ohio, but really throughout the country with us. So kudos on that. We are into our budget development process, or that time of year. So we've established meetings with the district leadership team to look at, how we're finishing out this year, what we need for next year, and actually not only next year, but update, a spending plan for 2 or 3 years. So we're in the middle of that as we go forward. Advocacy and legislative actions, 2 bills that we want to track and we want to influence the best we can. First one is Senate Bill 1, which is that flat tax. And I do understand that, that's a bill that's out there that may not be going away, but we want to make sure that our area legislators and others, even those not too far away from us that propose the bill, know the impact that that's going to have, not just on local government, but on taxpayers too. So we want to make sure that it happens. On House Bill 33, which is the fair school funding, which is, well, it's really the state bill and involves, funding of schools with that. The one provision that it does have in it is funding for school resource officers. And currently within that bill, and if we have any advocacy towards that, currently in that bill, the governor had put in there the funding of 1 school resource officer per school, okay, regardless of the size, okay, and that's what they did. And that's a great thing to have happen, but the other part of that provision was it is, I'll use the word prorated, but it's funded based on a state and local share. So where some schools may be getting the full $90,000, which they allocated for a school resource officer, ours is prorated, so that there's a local share that kicks in that says, well, if you want it, you have to fund about 60,000 of it, and we'll kick in 30. Okay, that's not the exact numbers, but it's prorated that way. So, the bill's not passed yet, so part of our encouragement is, let's see if we can get that funded 100% for our school district, not just partially for it. And the other part of that bill is to look at the fair school funding and see if that can be really funded with improved cost elements into it, which would get us closer to being off of the guarantee. I still think it would bring us there, but we may not be as far away as we currently are with that. So just 2 areas to make sure we have some advocacy for that. That's it.
Outstanding, thank you. Okay, now board comments. Mr. Patton?
I will keep mine brief as well. Today's presentation by the CAC, again, I really do value their hard work and dedication. I know what it's like to have to dedicate time and to take time away from the family, and I know they do the same thing. I know they left, but I do appreciate the work that they do. They do a really good job.
Mr. Reed?
Reminder that Friday night is the fundraiser at the high school, for the high school, not at the high school. No, it's at the Norland Manor. It's the Athletic Boosters Holiday Moon. Looking forward to spending the evening with my fellow board members and the community and staff alike. I wanted to mention that I've been on the board for 12 years. The first half of my career, I felt like we were spinning our wheels at communicating to the community, and that nobody seemed to know what was going on and how we were doing things and why we were doing things and just all of that. The second half of my career has completely changed that tide. You and your staff do a remarkable job of communicating through all of the town halls and these educational sessions and the CAC. I think that our community, if they don't know what's going on, it's because they don't have the interest to listen or understand, but it's not because the information's not out there. And so I wanted to just say thank you for that. I think that we have changed the tide, and where the future of West Clermont goes in terms of levies and bonds and all of that, I think that you'll gain more support as we continue to communicate. And I look forward to you continuing to do those efforts. Thank you for that. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Jim?
Happy first day of spring. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Just a reminder, there is a wonderful event going on Wednesday at the high school. It's called the Empty Bowl. It's from 5:30 to 7:30, and it's a $5 donation, and I went to it for the first time last year. It is an amazing event. The high school ceramics students actually make bowls, and there's dinner provided from donations. There's soup, salad, and desserts. And you get to choose a bowl from one of the students that they've made, and all the donations are, and proceeds go to Interparish Ministries. So it's a great way to give back to the community, and to see the great work that our students are doing in their art classes, and have some great soups. We have some people that can cook that are teachers, parents, community members. So it's just, if you need dinner or Wednesday night, head on over there. It's in the high school cafeteria. And that's all I have. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. All of us at one time.
Everybody. Mrs. Brinkman and Mr. Chumley. Any discussion? Okay.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
5 yes.
And our next board meeting?
Well, it's April 17th, because we have spring break in there, so there'll only be one meeting in April 17th.
April 17th. See everyone then, and have a great spring break and rest of your week.
Perfect.